Check, check, check. 1, 2, check. Yeah. Check, 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 check.
Bender Dental Care, located at 217 North McLean Boulevard in Elgin. Bender Dental wants everyone to be informed, appreciated, and cared for at all times. To prove it, they now offer a new patient exam for just $29. That includes consult, x-ray, exam, and cleaning. Let Bender Dental help you have healthy teeth and gums for a lifetime. Located at 217 North McLean Boulevard in Elgin. Visit benderdentalcare.com.
Roll into Bolero in Algonquin or Roselle and wake up with a story to tell. Bolero is bowling, gaming, dining, and nightlife with a twist. Score a sweet deal every day of the week and save big by checking out the daily deals online. Team up with your friends and hit the lanes by forming your own social club. Clubs offer lively competition and laid-back fun for everyone. From beginners to pros, make new friends, bowl, and hang out at a happening place. Visit bolero.com.
He's Chicagoland's anti-woke warrior, always looking to the left to expose Democrat hypocrisy. He's on a crusade to turn the suburbs red again. It's the Northwest Suburbs own Jeff.
In St. Charles.
And this is the Jeff Michaels Show on 1410 WRMN.
Want to feel your best and take control of your health? Tune in to the Dr. Bob Merton Show every Sunday from 1 to 4 p.m. right here on WRMN AM 1410. Join Dr. Bob for expert advice on nutrition, exercise, herbal supplements, mind-body medicine, and more. Get answers to your questions. Stay updated with breaking health news, and don't miss special segments like The Health Alternative and Outrage and Mystery of the Week. Whether you're looking for wellness tips or the latest in holistic healing, the Dr. Bob Martin Show has you covered. It's your weekly dose of health, Sundays from 1 to 4 p.m., only on WRMN, AM 1410.
From morning coffee to your evening commute, WRMN 1410 AM is here for you. The faithful friend that brings you local news, timely topics, and the friendliest voices in the Valley. Stay informed, entertained, and engaged with our full lineup of shows, streaming all day, every day at WRMN1410.com or on the WRMN app. Wherever you are, we're right there with you. So why switch stations? Stick with the one that has it all. WRMN 1410 AM, your daily companion, your constant conversation.
Twin Gyros, located at 4870 North Harlem Avenue in Harwood Heights, serves traditional gyros as well as its award-winning chicken gyros on a pita. Twin Gyros has a diverse menu that includes barbecue ribs, chicken dinners, Philly cheesesteak sandwiches, cheeseburgers, and Vienna beef hot dogs that have recently been inducted into the Vienna Beef Hot Dog Hall of Fame. Check out the full menu at twinsgyros.com. That's Twin Gyros at 4870 North Harlem Avenue in Harwood Heights, Illinois.
El Diablo Cantina, located by Spring Hill Mall at 113 Southwestern in Carpentersville, is your fun, hip, and festive family Mexican cantina, serving authentic recipes from all over Mexico that are made fresh daily. There's delicious cocktails using fresh fruits or your choice of 30 craft beers, which go great with the menu. There's indoor and outdoor dining, open from 4 till 11 and until 4 a.m. on weekends, featuring Latin line dancing. Visit eldiablocantina.com today.
It's 109 here at WRMN, and let's kick it live now to the Jeff Michaels Show on this Saturday afternoon. Welcome, Jeff.
Oh, hi. How are you?
Good.
Today.
Good. Having a little technical issue, but I think we got you now, buddy.
So no opening music, huh?
Now, we had it, but you weren't ready when we played it, so we'll take it out of the next break.
No problem. No, don't worry about it. Hey, anyway, welcome, y'all. It's whatever day today is. I believe it's the 16th of November. Not that you needed me to tell you that. And this is the Jeff Michaels Show, coming to you live today from Miami. Why are we in Miami? We just decided to come down here. But no, live from Miami. And if you happen to be watching online, you'll see I'm not in a radio studio, but that's okay. This is still a radio show, not a TV show. And welcome. How you doing this week? And what are we going to talk about this week? Well, we're going to talk about these cabinet picks. Hello, these cabinet picks that Trump has been rolling out rather quickly and without warning, and that's good. A lot of them I love. I can't complain about any of them yet. I know there's a few that the media is going bonkers about. And by the way, as an aside, watching the bonkers go crazy over picks like Matt Gaetz and Tulsi Gabbard. I'm just loving them melting down almost as much as their meltdown after the election, but not quite. That was still the best of the best. So we're going to get to that in a little bit. I'm going to talk first about some of the fallout from the election, some of the fallout from this election landslide, which really is what it was. I mean, anybody wants to tell you it wasn't a landslide? I don't know what they're using for benchmarks, but a Donald Trump election where he won the popular vote and the electoral vote is a landslide. And he increased minorities in every single big city. I mean, the big cities, which normally deliver for the Democrats in the presidential election, did again, but not anywhere close to what they normally did. He lost a lot of the Jewish vote, should have lost it all, as far as I'm concerned. But that's another discussion. And by the way, had the Democrats been smart enough to come up with a good candidate, would Trump have still won? I don't know. I mean, how much of it was it making up for lost ground versus back into a normal cycle? I mean, people forget how weird the entire last cycle was, being in COVID. And you remember, just as this started to ramp up, just beginning years when COVID hit. So the entire process was pretty much tainted by COVID. And by the way, as an aside, I'm not sure if you saw the graphic that came out, but there's shortly after the election, there's a graphic that's been floating around now on the internet, which shows the amount of total votes. And I know they don't have the total votes counted yet for this, but they're pretty close. Of course, Florida, for example, third biggest state in the country, they had their votes all counted by what, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night? California still hasn't finished. So the blue states have the problems. But so the fallout has obviously been tremendous. The one that I'm talking about in particular right now is the mainstream media. And not a moment too soon, and it couldn't happen to nicer guys. CNN, MSNBC are hemorrhaging viewers. They are hemorrhaging viewers. By the way, before I forget, I just want to tell Mark back at the station, I have my 15:45 breaks that I normally do. I'm not going to do the 15 break. I'm probably going to go all the way through to the heartbreak at 30, then we'll play it by ear at the other break. So just so you know, little inside info there for you. Anyway, CNN, MSNBC have been hemorrhaging viewers. Apparently, MSNBC is for sale. The rumor is that they're both for sale. CNN was just purchased by, now I'm having a mental block, Warner Brothers. I don't know, about a year and a half ago. MSNBC has always been owned by NBC. Hence the MSNBC. In fact, it was originally a joint venture between Microsoft Network and NBC. Hence the MSNBC. In case you wondered why Bill Gates got such left bona fides, there's another little tie-in. But all of a sudden, as of this last election, and it's just amazing how many of these dynamics are just night and day different from what they were last election. I mean, as you recall, Donald Trump entering the fray in 2016 2016 was a huge boon to all of these legacy outlets. CNN, their ratings went off the chart. MSNBC exploded. And during Trump's presidency, CNN's ratings were just huge the whole time because they were one of your anti-CNN mouthpieces, and they did it with glee. And so as much as they said, as much as they were as nasty about Trump as they possibly could have been, what was it, 96, 98%, there was some study done, was negative coverage of Donald Trump. It still helped their ratings. And after the 2020 election, their ratings started to dip. In fact, they were sold about a year later, and their ratings have never really come back. They haven't come back to what they were during the Trump years or before. And obviously, the world has now given up on CNN as a bona fide news outlet because they've abandoned them. I just read that MSNBC's ratings since the election have dropped off 56%, and CNN's are something like 60 or 64, as I recall. I'm doing that from memory, so don't quote me on that one. Why all of a sudden? Well, if you put yourself in their position, I know it's hard to put yourself in the position of somebody who thinks left, but if you can, try and understand how they think. And, they're going to their boomerang media all day long, CNN, MSNBC, and being told this is in the bag, we got this thing aced, it's not even close, or they're close, and all the spin that you kept hearing, and then they wake up the next day, and it wasn't even close. It's just fascinating when you think about how these whole election days unfolded, the night, the reaction thereto. Remember in 2020, I live in the city of Chicago, as I've told you before, I live in the city, but and a lot of businesses got boarded up in anticipation of Trump getting reelected in 2020. Obviously, it didn't happen, and nothing occurred, so nothing got destroyed. The boards came down. I'm not sure what would have happened if we had another election like that, but these landslide elections tend to shut all that stuff up. So that's why it's just a fascinating, what are they going to do? When 48 or 47 or 41 states go for Trump, and even the ones that went for Harris had a much smaller margin than the last, 4 or 5 Democrat candidates, something's going on there. So CNN, NBC, hemorrhaging viewers. A bunch of the podcasters out there, too. There's this guy you may have heard of. His name is David Pakman. Of course, if you're not on the left, you probably haven't heard of him. And, he's as obnoxious as all of these guys on the left, as you might imagine. I'm just going to be honest. Yeah, the guy's kind of an obnoxious twerp. And he's one of these typical lefties where, he's a smart guy, and he's got a quick tongue, and he's got some, but he's got all the typical lefty comebacks. So you can pretty much predict. And that's one of the good things about debating people on the left. You can pretty much anticipate what all their comebacks are going to be on any given subject. So if you know that and you're armed with it, makes it even better. So anyway, that's the story of CNN and MSNBC. There is talk that they're going to be unloading a lot of their talent. The first shoe's already dropped. Chris Wallace left CNN this week. Now, you might recall, he ended up sort of backing in there anyway. He was one of the never-Trumpers that were left at Fox News at the end, after Shepard Smith left and all those other guys. And shortly after he had done that debate with Trump, where that was sort of the beginning of the end, was that Chris Wallace debate, which was the first of the 2 debates in 2020. Shortly after Chris Wallace left, and he went to join CNN, and I forget what they were calling it, but it was their new streaming service, which never took off. They spent something like $300 million setting it up, didn't make a dime. Never started, and announced it, a week after I think Chris Wallace left to join them. So they found a couple shows. They made a couple shows for him on the weekend. Who was talking to Chris Wallace, and then he was showing up on their panels. And they're paying him $7 million a year, so they got to use him somehow, and that's what they were doing. So that lasted for a couple of years until last week, and he left. He said to pursue podcast and streaming opportunities like everybody else is. That's great, but wasn't his choice. Of course, if I was making $7 million a year doing that, I probably would not choose to walk away from it either unless I had something bona fide to walk into there. So that's the story there. I'd love to take pull straws or whatever you call it, take some guesses as to who will be the next ones to fall. Maybe it'll be Jake Tapper. Can't wait to see some of the MSNBC goofballs go. And you know who number one needs to be there too? Miss Joy Reid. Why she's even employed, I'll never know. But that's a discussion for another day. You want to join the conversation, by the way, I'd love you to do it. 847-931-1410. That's 847-931-1410. That's the call line here to 1410 WRMN. You got anything you want to talk about? You want to tell me I'm full of baloney? Go ahead, pick up the phone, do that. Otherwise, you got something else you want to bring up on your mind? Today is your day. 847-931-1410. Anyway, back to the fallout of the legacy media. Jeff Bezos, and this was another little nugget started coming out. This was about a week before the election when some of these tea leaves started to get more easily read. An internal memo or email that was sent inside to people within the Washington Post got out, and it was from Jeff Bezos, which he has now gone public with, saying he wants the paper, not just the opinion page. I think he even mentioned the news pages. Now, news pages shouldn't be anything but news, but we know that that's not the case, especially in papers like the Washington Post, the New York Times, and so on. And he wants more conservative, pro-Trump voices on there. And that's one of the big differences. I mean, CNN's always had their quote-unquote conservative talking head, but it was always a never-Trumper. If you hated Trump, doesn't matter which way your politics were, you were welcome on CNN or MSNBC. Now they're realizing, not that they didn't always know, but they're realizing for real now that the Republican Party really is two factions, and the Trump faction is really more the now faction. That's the one that voted him in office, not these never-Trumpers that really, at the end of the day, don't speak for Republicans. They certainly don't speak for the Republicans who are being voted in. There aren't very many never-Trumpers left in Congress. There's a few. One of them is the new head of the Senate Majority Leader, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Most of the never-Trumpers are gone because they held on to their, the first original never-Trumper to jump ship was Paul Ryan, and then they started going one after the other. And that's all good because at the end of the day, whichever way the Republican Party is going, you're either with the party and you're on the train, or you're not on the train and you're doing your own thing. If you want to do your own thing, that's fine, but have a message and go with it and see if it goes anywhere. If it doesn't, sit down and shut up. Even The View, apparently, and I got to see this before I believe it, but apparently The View is considering putting on a pro-Trump Republican voice. Now, that would be must-see TV, wouldn't it? A smart pro-Trump Republican on The View going up against Whoopi and Sonny Hostin, who, in my opinion, is one of the dumbest people on TV, but that's also another discussion. Boy, would I love to see a nice, smart pro-Trumper up against them. Scott Jennings, who's on CNN, who I thought might have been a good choice for press secretary, is a pro-Trump. He's not a real bombastic pro-Trump guy, but he's very much pro-Trump, and he's a very smart debater. And seems to me like he's been having the time of his life since the election, because he's just kind of being calm and speaking the truth and saying what he's seeing and calling the balls and strikes. And they don't have a lot of things that they can say in diss to him, if you will. So that's been kind of interesting. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Washington Post. No, New York Times, no, they're never going to. I mean, they won't change if you put a gun to their head. They'd rather close up. I mean, they fired a longtime editor just for publishing an article from Tom Cotton. Back when all the riots and everything were happening in 2020, Tom Cotton wrote an article about that states should employ, when need be or if need be, the National Guard to fight some of those rioters. So the New York Times published it. A week later, the editor-in-chief was gone, or the editor of the opinion page, of the opinion section, gone. Boom. Had been there like, 12 years, something like that, out of there. Just for letting another voice be heard. So that's their story. So we'll see what happens. But, it is interesting that all of a sudden, all these hard left voices are abandoning their boomerang media just because turns out they done lied to them. And they were surprised to notice it. They were shocked that for the last year, CNN, MSNBC kept telling them, don't worry, we got this in the bag, all good, sit back, chill. Well, they sat back, they chilled, and it froze. So that's where we are. So that's one big fallout from the Trump landslide. Other thing that we're watching, I think, from what I can see, we're seeing kind of disintegrate before our eyes, is this whole woke and DEI infrastructure. It seems like DEI has almost become, kind of a toxic term. And I can tell you right now, I've been in some big law firms over the last 6-8 months in the city, where you walk into there, and I mean big law firms, I won't give any names, big law firms, 300 lawyers, 400 lawyers, huge offices, big buildings. I mean, you go in big major buildings downtown where you walk in and you've got an entry, front entry to the law offices that's huge and very grandiose. And you get hit with a DEI thing right in front of you. We support DEI and we will, be a DEI firm. Okay, good. Makes you feel good about yourself. And I hope you were able to continue to run your business the way that you had to. But it sure seems like most of that is suddenly going away. And we're seeing it disintegrate before our very eyes. So that's been kind of a nice, fun thing. Anyway, second half of our hour, we're going to talk about the cabinet picks that Trump has made. We'll just run through some of them real quick. We'll talk about them after the break in a little more detail. And again, like I said earlier in the show, I am enjoying the meltdowns, especially on Matt Gaetz and Pete Hegseth. And I'll tell you right now, I'm not a huge Matt Gaetz fan at all. What he did with the whole Kevin McCarthy thing really ticked me off. But he very well might be the right guy to be starting out with, and we'll get to that. Pete Hegseth too. I didn't know as much about him as we all do now. As it seemed like it's against the grain or counterintuitive to not have somebody who at least was a 4-star general or had that kind of training behind him. Yeah, I understand that thought process, but you know what? A lot of stuff has got to be moved. This is not a time for politeness and getting along well with the other side. We've been doing that as Republicans, while the Democrats haven't. And that's why Donald Trump is here in the first place, because we've had nothing but go along to get along Republicans that didn't want to ruffle feathers and let the Republicans take over academia and the media and all aspects of culture and yada, 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 yada. Well, the Republicans were all being nice and professional and courteous, and their lives were all good. And that's kind of how the uniparty came to be, so to speak. Well, thank goodness the uniparty ain't uniting anymore. And is it going to get ugly? Yeah. But I don't think there's any other way around it. They've been playing ugly. We got to play ugly. You got to fight fire with fire. So we'll get into why I think Matt Gaetz and Pete Hegseth are two guys that you might well want to go with. Susie Wiles is chief of staff. Seems like a great pick. I didn't know a lot about her other than the fact that she ran his campaign. Now, wait a second. I thought Donald Trump was a misogynist. But he picked the first female chief of staff in history? Wow. Did anybody tell him that she's a woman? Marco Rubio? Great pick. Great pick. We'll get into the rest of them in just a wee skosh. In the meantime, 847-931-1410. That's the phone number. Punch it up. Got something you want to talk about? We're here to banter. It's AM 1410, WRMN, and the Jeff Michaels Show.
If you're in charge of purchasing coring bits or diamond tooling for an engineering or construction firm, you're gonna want to hear this. 4Core Biz delivers a critical missing component in the market. Our team of trained experts make sure that you receive a full valuation of your actual coring needs to ensure that you're getting the optimum performance out of all your core bits and machines. A cheap core bit is just that, cheap. It costs less but bores far less holes and costs more per hole. Our bits cost a little more, but bore you a whole lot more holes. 4 times more. Give us a shot and we'll send you your bits before you pay us a dime. 4Core Biz. Visit us at 4corebiz.com. That's the number 4, COREBIZ.com. Or call 888-831-9557. 4Core Biz.
Over the years, you've brought them into your home. You were prescribed opioids after the C-section. When Dad injured his back, when your basketball star tore his ACL, opioids helped with the pain, and you held on to them just in case. But did you know holding on to unused opioids puts your family at risk? Opioids are powerful pain-reducing prescription medicines, but most people who are prescribed opioids don't finish their prescriptions. So millions of unused opioids are sitting in homes across the country. And tragically, more than 100 Americans die every day from overdoses involving opioids. What can you do to protect your family? Remove the risk of unused opioids from your home. Pills, patches, or syrups in drawers, purses, and cabinets, anywhere they might be hiding. To find out how to dispose of them properly, visit www.fda.gov/drug disposal.
Michael Brown, former Undersecretary of Homeland Security and Director of FEMA, is your new full-time host of The Weekend, which airs every Saturday from 4 to 7 p.m. right here on WRMN. Each week on the popular 3-hour program, Brown offers listeners a fresh take on the weekend talk with his provocative insights into current events, politics, and culture. So late in the day on Saturday, make it a point to catch The Weekend with Michael Brown right here on WRMN, AM 1410 and 96.7 FM.
Okay, antibodies, huddle up. We're a great team, but the flu is dominating. The good news is the human we're protecting just got his flu shots. That means all of us antibodies have strong new gear that will help us fight and defend against the flu. We must win so that our human can stay healthy and help protect the people he cares about most.
Let's work as a team to defend against the flu. Gear up with a flu shot to help protect yourself and others and reduce your risk of being sick or hospitalized with the flu. Learn more at getmyflushot.org. Brought to you by the AMA, CDC, and the Ad Council.
As the Elgin Police Department continues to participate in the Distracted Driving campaign, they wanted to share some tips from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration website regarding safe driving. If you are expecting a text or need to send one, pull over and park your car in a safe location. Once you are safely off the road and parked, it's safe to text. Designate your passenger as your designated texter. Allow them to access your phone to respond to calls or messages. Do not engage in social media scrolling or messaging while driving. Are you struggling not to text and drive? Activate your phone's Do Not Disturb feature or put your cell phone in the trunk, the glove box, or the back seat of your vehicle until you arrive at your destination. Remember, the Elgin Police are conducting directed patrols to enforce distracted driving violations. Just drive and stay safe. A message from our friends at the Elgin Police Department and your friends here at WRMN, AM 1410 and 96.7 FM.
Trolling all the groves, Pingree, Fox River, Charter, and Long for misguided leftists. Trying to change one heart at a time. It's Jeff Michaels on 1410 WRMN.
We're talking about Trump's cabinet picks, which I'll quickly run through. the list of the few that I know about. Then I'm going to talk about a couple of them. But so I just finished talking about Susie Wiles. I think that's her name, as chief of staff. Seems like she's pretty sharp on the ball. Seen her a couple times in interviews. Marco Rubio, great Secretary of State pick. RFK Jr., Health and Human Services. We'll see. You know, I mean, I saw somebody complaining that he's never been a doctor and he never did this, that, and the other. Do you know who the current Secretary of Health and Human Services is? I'm going to say his name right. What, Exera? Now I'm forgetting his name. You know, he was a California congressman. Exera Sarabia? I forget what it is. HHS Secretary. I'm looking on my phone right now. And it is, Xavier Becerra. Xavier Becerra, who was a congressman in California, was never a doctor. Nobody screamed that he wasn't up for the job, but RFK Jr. is. By the way, how could you have a problem with anybody being appointed who's married to Cheryl Hines? Now, he may not be forever, but he still is now. Elise Stefanik, another great pick for UN ambassador. Nikki Haley was a wonderful UN ambassador. Elise Stefanik's going to be even better. Mark my words. In fact, the only thing bad about it is that she only does it for 4 years. I don't want her to be gone from the government. I'd like to see her do more things. Maybe go back to New York and run for senator or something. Who knows? But she's just the best. I mean, she almost single-handedly got that whole pro-Palestine thing on campus turned around, where these schools were, I don't want to say they were supporting it, but they certainly weren't protecting against it, that's for sure. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy being put in charge of a new department called the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. I think it's a great idea because, as you and I, as conservative Republicans know, there is more waste in this government than in a landfill. There's more pork in a than a pork farm. So hopefully that can get addressed. What is the one I just heard about the other day? They had in the budget, either last year or earmarked for this year, $500,000 to see why selfies, to do tests as to why selfies were, what was it, self-enjoying or something. $500,000. That's a good use of money. Stephen Miller, I know he's a bit of a, an attack dog type, but I don't think they get much smarter. And for what he's got to undertake when it comes to dealing with all these migrants and sending them back, which I think has to happen, he's the guy. Stephen Chung, another holdover from his previous administration, another sharp guy. He's going to be the White House communications director. Another reason why I think you can feel a lot better about these picks going forward and having an effect versus a lot of the ones he had the first time. You know, he didn't really know Washington as much as he does now, and a lot of these guys were sort of guesses. You might recall who he picked, Anthony Scaramucci, for his White House communications director. I think it lasted about a week or two. And then Scaramucci spent the next 4 years on Twitter doing everything he could to get Trump impeached and then not reelected. Up until 2 weeks ago, or, just before the election, he was putting the nastiest things out on X, Anthony Scaramucci. So I think these are all going to be much better, more long-lasting picks. This gal Caroline Leavitt, Levitt, his new White House press secretary, I saw her handle the press a few times as his as one of his campaign spokespeople, and she seemed to be on top of it. I thought Kayleigh McEnany was great. I mean, she just handled them with no problem. I think this gal will be just as good. So let's go back and let's talk about the couple that are getting all kinds of talk right now, and that would be Matt Gaetz as Attorney General, and then Pete Hegseth. Let's talk about Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz is not somebody who I would sit here and say is a great guy. Not somebody I'd want to go out and have a beer with. I can tell you that right now. But when you think about what he's got to do, he may just be the right guy for the job. And I don't care if the person that does this is somebody that I love, hate, revere, or worship. I just want somebody to go in there basically and burn the thing down. And that's what I'm talking about. You got to burn it down. Think about what the DOJ has been doing over the last 10 years. Last 10 years. You know, here, Jack Smith. Jack Smith was turned loose by Merrick Garland, the AG, to prosecute Joe Biden's opponent. Period. That is what we just witnessed over the last 18 months happen by our federal government. Our Attorney General, Jack Smith, our Attorney General, Merrick Garland, Chicagoan, by the way. I think he's from Wilmette, I believe is where I think he went to New Trier. Anyway, our Attorney General sicked Jack Smith on the Republicans and sent him out there, cut him loose to prosecute Joe Biden's opponent. Period. End of story. The DOJ threw a hissy fit basically after Roe versus Wade was overturned and used an obscure law, I think it was called the FACE Act, to dig up and hunt down pro-life conservatives. And we've been hearing stories about that for the last year and a half. Few of them are still awaiting trial. I think somebody was convicted of something or other and actually got some time. Putting little old ladies in prison because they're having hissy fits because Roe versus Wade got overturned. I mean, it's hard to believe that these things have even been happening. You know, and again, we talked about this last week as well. When this whole election cycle started, beginning of 23, Trump was way behind in the polls on the Republican side. I think he had like a 30 or 29% approval rating, and DeSantis was like at 52. 3 or 4 other guys were ahead of Trump. It looked like Trump, okay, he's going to come back. It was before he announced, but I think most people expected he was going to. But I think most people thought, okay, you know, he's Trump and he's never going to give up, but, you know, it's over. Well, that probably would have been the case, except when the lawfare started, things started changing. You might recall again, the first act of the lawfare was when the DOJ, so that would have been at the behest of and knowledge of Merrick Garland and Joe Biden. Whether they tell you yes or no, Joe Biden knew all about it. I'll tell you right now. That was the first public outreach that began the lawfare. Almost immediately, you saw things start to shift towards Trump. So people watched that, want to see what it was all about, started to learn more about all the Mar-a-Lago docs and all that stuff. Then the next thing we hear, I believe the second one to get filed was the thing in Georgia and so on. But as these things started piling up and people started seeing what they were putting out there, his popularity started going up. And it never turned. And the more they pressed it, the more it went up. And the more it went up, the more they pressed it. The point where they basically pulled him over the line themselves. That's what happened. And they still haven't learned their lesson. I don't think they look back and other than maybe realizing, that there's not much they can do about it. Anyway, we have a phone caller, I understand. Hello, you're on the air.
Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
Hi, good. How are you? Oh, Dean.
I'm great. Thank you very much. Listen, first I want to thank you for, I know you were scheduled to be off today, and you still did a live show, and you're doing it remotely, and I appreciate it. That's first and foremost. But beyond that, I thought you mentioned that Pete, was it Hegseth? Is that his name?
Yes.
He's like getting the name put up there to be defense secretary. Is that what they're going to do with him?
Yes, as I say.
I tell you, I don't know if you know anything about this guy, but as far as a patriot, as far as a true blue guy, I think he joined the military late in his life. And, he is just really an amazing guy, and I think a good pick. And you hear all them complaining about a lot of the other picks the Trump administration is going to be making. But I'll tell you what, and I have no opinion because I didn't look into any others, but on this guy here, I think for defense secretary, this is a huge, solid selection, I believe.
I think so. I mean, people are getting all bent out of shape. He wasn't a general. Well, I mean, since when are there any kind of preordained requirements for these positions? But more importantly, what's the job ahead? See, that's one of my complaints about the Democrats has always been, they've got all these things they want to do, but I can't tell you what the goal is. What's the goal? Well, I'll tell you what the goal here is. The goal is a lot of restoration, as far as I'm concerned. You got to bring back, you got to get rid of all the woke crap. You got to be able to start recruiting people. They are so far down in recruitment. And, he comes out and he said in an interview like a few months ago or a couple months ago that he didn't think women should be in combat. People forget that's only been 10 years. Obama brought that in. And it's not misogynistic. It's the same reason you're not going to make a woman become one of the front linemen on the Chicago Bears, although they might do better than their current front line on the offensive side. But, because,
that gender thing is like a whole nother topic, and you and I could go through a whole show on that, because I'm former firefighter in law enforcement, and they lower the standards for women to take those tests, but yet they're equal, allegedly. And I have nothing against them in the service, in the police or fire service. I'm all for it. But there are certain limitations that they have,
Agreed.
But again, we'll talk about that later. I just wanted to talk about this Pete guy. I think he's good, and I believe he's a captain. So it's not like he's
major.
A little private.
He was a major.
A major.
Oh, he was a major.
Major now. Okay. I thought he was a captain. Okay.
Yeah.
So he has some sense of rank, which is pretty good. And then I happen to I watch TCM all the time. And if you remember Theodore Roosevelt, he started out as just a veteran fighter.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. And it's a cool movie. I'll send it to you later.
Oh, yeah.
Nonetheless, this Pete Hegseth, from what I could see, I think is a strong selection. I'm not going to co-sign for any of the others because, again, I have not done the research. But this guy here, man, his heart's in the right direction. He's a veteran. He's on. I just think he's going to be a good selection.
I couldn't agree more. And he's on board with the Trump agenda. And I'm not just saying, because he's loyal. That's the reason. But because the Trump agenda is to take no crap but not be a hawk. You say he's on the Trump agenda. No different than, anybody else.
I do. I own businesses. Am I a part of nepotism? Sure. I'm going to help my family first. Again, not at the risk of the business not running properly. But why wouldn't you help your own first? And if he's thinking and talking and maybe, going the same direction of the administration, that's the guy you want. Any business. And politics is no different.
Absolutely. I mean, isn't it refreshing to see, and we said this before, and there were a couple of guffaws, but isn't it refreshing to see somebody trying to run this thing, at least to a degree, like a business? It just means you'll apply common sense.
Yeah. And again, you'll get me on that portion of it, but again, a topic for another show. Dialogue has a lot to go with things, too. It's not so much, it's how you say it as so much as what you say. I'm a straight shooter, and I'm right off the hip. And you could tell people here, around me, and you and I have had many conversations. All I do is tell it like it is. I expect people to handle their area and do what they're supposed to do. And if you can't, well, then I'll make the changes. That's how it is.
Exactly.
But there's still a way, though. But I'm not the president of the United States. I never went for the name calling stuff. And like when we went through this other garbage, that's not my president when Donald Trump was elected the first time. But yet we have to recognize everybody else. To me, Biden was my president, and I respected him. That's the president of the United States. Kamala Harris was our vice president. We don't need all the names that go along with it. That's my only position.
Well, I certainly respected the position always. I'm not sure I can say I agreed with respecting Biden. But
well, I got you.
I tried. But towards the end, they really, he started to lose me for good when he did this speech with the red around him, and he was calling all the MAGA Republicans, whatever he was calling them, that speech from Philadelphia, from the Liberty Bell.
Right.
That was sort of the beginning of the end, as far as I was concerned. But
those are defensive moves that you got to be honest with the dialogue. If we're going to be talking honest here. The other guy started his dialogue negative. So, again, so now Joe Biden has fallen into nonsense like that. My point is we need to get back to working across the aisle. It's not that far gone. We need to focus on Bill Clinton was the only guy that ever had a balanced budget. Okay, and I'm sure you heard that before, and you could argue that. But this is what we have to focus on, things like that. Do we need a lot of government? I don't think we need as much as we have, but we need well-working government and balanced government that both sides have a place. If we're going to do this every 4 years because there's a new political side in and now we're shifting, our country's we're not going to last as a country that we are.
You're correct.
So that's my
entirely
sense. But
that middle's got to come back together again.
It sure does, man. So I like what you do. I appreciate you being here today, even though you were scheduled off. Thanks for coming in. And I hope you didn't mind me chiming in on this.
No, anytime.
Hegseth. How do you say his name? Pete Hegseth?
Hegseth.
Is that it?
Okay. Hegseth.
I'm really impressed with all the stuff so far I've read about him.
Me too. I'm excited.
Yeah,
And here,
I am.
And Matt, what about Matt Gaetz? What are your thoughts on him?
About who?
Matt Gaetz, Attorney General.
You know what? I'm just going to be honest. I haven't done no research on it whatsoever.
Here's how I look at it. Oh, go ahead. Go. No, you go.
I'm listening. Go ahead. Tell me.
I was going to say, I can't argue with a lot of the people who have, and a lot of Republicans too are clamoring up about not being behind the pick. But, and he pissed a lot of people off, when he personally took on that whole thing with, oh my God, Kevin. I can't believe it. Must be because I'm Saturday. I'm having a mental block. What was the previous, before Mike Johnson? Oh, this is so embarrassing. What's his name? The congressman from California who was the Speaker of the House.
McCarthy?
McCarthy,
you ever sometimes you forget like your brother's name all of a sudden? Yeah, I forgot his name.
Yeah.
That whole thing bothered me when he went after McCarthy on his own. I'm not so sure that was so warranted. I understood a lot of the issues with Kevin McCarthy, but so yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that he's done but you know what? At the end of the day, when you understand the DOJ, I think has got to be burnt down. I mean, burnt down.
Yeah.
And
there's some certain issues there for sure.
Yeah. So maybe Matt Gaetz is the guy to do it. It started with, it wasn't so much the DOJ, but this whole thing I thought started with Obama also when he started when he was sticking the, against the, oh my God, what's on with my mind today? In Cincinnati, it was the Treasury. He was sicking them after the conservative organizations. Oh well, I didn't prepare for it.
Well, Department of Justice you brought up. Obama, when he came in his first 4 years, he had all three branches, right?
Yep.
And he wanted to make this big reform, and I was a little disappointed that I didn't see that huge reform. He could have had it all done.
Right.
And that was one of his main points. And again, I'm summarizing it, and I'm not hitting all the points. But still, when you have that control, and I hate that word as well, but when you have that control, use it. At least get done your campaign promises, which I believe was one of his promises, that he was going to square away Department of Justice. I think he left it in worse shape, more employees and less getting done. Because I started doing a little research on it, and I gave up. But nonetheless, I think it's a tough job to make these selections for all these department heads. He's got a good one here with Pete Hegseth. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of them are. Like I said, I think Marco Rubio is a great pick for Secretary of State.
Yeah.
And RFK Jr., we'll see. I mean, who's to say what is or isn't qualified to run HHS? Elise Stefanik, I think she's going to be inspiring. I think you're going to, Nikki Haley was a great UN ambassador. I think Elise Stefanik will be better. Tom Herron.
I wish she would go back to being it because I thought I was very impressed with what Haley did. Yeah.
She was. But that's probably just not to be. Not to be in the
not for now. You never know. Things could change tomorrow.
Right. I still like her. I know they
politics.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. Look at her. Look at. He was enemies with Megyn Kelly for a while. Now they're close confidants.
Yeah.
Look at first he was Ted Cruz was on the other side. Now he and Ted Cruz are buddies.
Sure.
So yeah, I think for the most part, this could be a very, very good, effective, growth 4 years going forward. I'm hopeful if these picks.
I'm there too.
Yeah.
All right,
so
thanks, Jeff, I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks. Good talking to you.
Likewise.
So here.
Talk to you again.
Okay. So hey, so Mark, let's just get a couple examples of Matt Gaetz and how he operates. This was him talking to Congress about a year ago. Clip one.
I take no lecture on asking patriotic Americans to weigh in and contribute to this fight from those who would grovel and bend knee for the lobbyists and special interests who own our leadership, who have, boo all you want, who have hollowed out this town and have borrowed against the future of our future generations. I'll be happy to fund my political operation through the work of hardworking Americans, $10 and $20 and $30 at a time, and you all keep showing up at the lobbyist fundraisers and see how that goes for you. I reserve.
Matt Gaetz is one of those guys that does not care what anybody thinks about him. Literally doesn't care what anybody thinks about him. I say literally, I shouldn't because I'm not in his brain, but it sure seems that way. And some people think you can't trust people like that. Some people don't feel that way. I don't know either way, but I sure think it's probably the right personality to have right now to go after that department and just tear it apart. And that's what's got to happen. There's another example. This was Merrick. This was when Merrick Garland was actually being grilled about Jack Smith, not by Matt Gaetz. This was by Congressman Jim Jordan, but all tied to the same thing. And again, Merrick Garland was such a qualified attorney general. I mean, yeah, he was a prosecutor and he was a judge and he was almost a Supreme Court justice and all those things. But I don't know. He sure seems like he's done a lot of unsavory things while running the DOJ. Clip two, go.
Mr. Garland, why Jack Smith? Why'd you pick him?
I appointed somebody who was not a political appointee, somebody who was independent, nonpartisan, with a record of career experience as a prosecutor.
Do you regret the pick?
I'm sorry,
Do you regret picking him?
No, I do not regret picking him.
Well, prosecutors aren't supposed to tamper with evidence, and it looks like that's what he did. He changed the sequence of the documents that he seized from Mar-a-Lago.
I'm sorry, that's a false characterization, but that is ongoing.
Here's what he said to the court, Mr. Attorney General. There are some boxes where the order of items within the box is not the same as in the associated scans. I mean, he said it. I didn't say it. He told the court that.
Now you're asking me to comment on a discovery dispute that's ongoing in a court. I don't know the facts of it, and I'm not going to comment on it.
No, this is from Jack Smith filing with...
And he starts dog paddling because he's got nothing he can say. And that's not the only one. I mean, as you recall, he sent the FBI again after Peter Navarro, Roger Stone, knocked on both their doors in Florida at 6 o'clock in the morning, punishing conservative citizens, going after parents who complain to school boards because there's pornographic books in the library that their kids told them they were reading. Stuff has to change. And I know I'm not alone thinking that way. That's why we have Donald Trump back in the White House. Jeff Michaels Show, over again. A quick hour has zipped by. Thanks for joining me. The good Lord willing and the creeks don't rise, I'll be back here again 1 week from right now. Same time, same station. AM 1410, WRMN. And the Jeff Michaels Show. Have a great week.
Thank you, Jeff. Great show. And coming up next, it's going to be Rich on Tech between 2 and 5. Join Court Stevens tonight with CD Showcase from 7 until 9 as our music night starts at 7 o'clock this evening. Keep it right here on WRMN. Have a great afternoon.
Join me, your host, Michael Francis Tuman, on my radio show, Chief Guard of the Republic, where we talk about all things national security and defense. Other topics will include personal security, safety, and dealing with law enforcement situations. Call in, ask me questions. I will get you answers. every week Saturday, noon until 1 p.m. here on Fox River Valley's 1410 AM WRMN.